Card King, here I come. Hello, sports fans, sports collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to the Card King Sports and Variety Show. I am your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490am.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the telephone line, I welcome to the program former Major League Baseball catcher who played for the White Sox, Indians, and Minnesota Twins. We welcome in Matt Merullo. Matt, Brian C., thanks for your time this morning.
Oh, you're welcome, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Matt, I want to begin early in your career. You had a 6-year career in the big leagues as a catcher, and I want to go back to your very early years and what drew you to the position of catching.
Oh, man. It actually goes way back to my grandfather, who was a scout, longtime scout after having been a former Major League shortstop. My first year out of Little League gave me a catcher's mitt for my birthday. And, he just said, "You look like you like it back there." And that was his way of telling me that my arm wasn't strong enough to pitch and I couldn't play shortstop anymore. And, I swung the bat left-handed. And, so I was pretty much, primarily a catcher since I was about 14 years old. And it really helped me. I found myself catching in a semi state tournament game as a freshman in high school. So if it wasn't for being a catcher, I don't think I would have gotten the opportunities I did. Swinging the bat left-handed, of course, made it that much easier, moving up through the ranks.
And, Matt, you mentioned your grandfather. Let's speak about Lennie Merullo a bit. He played for the Cubs during the 1940s under manager Charlie Grimm one season, who was really, really an ambassador of the game. And your grandfather was also part of that 1945 National League pennant team with the Cubs.
Yep.
How was your relationship with your grandfather? Did he give you lessons? Talk about your grandfather. He lived to almost 100 years old. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, 98. And he worked until he was about 85. And it was amazing to go back into scouting myself and, essentially be working with him. He was working for the Major League Scouting Bureau, which formed in 1974. He had originally scouted for the Cubs after playing for the Cubs, but no, we were very, very close. Spent a lot of time together, and he would take me around. During the summer, I would spend a week or so with him in a hotel while he was on the road watching minor league baseball games. The Eastern League, which was AA, around here in Connecticut, had several teams. And I was, 10 years old, 12 years old, just hanging out with scouts, watching minor leaguers, and really just learned so much. He exposed me to a lot, as well as he, of course, gave me a lot of guidance. And his, the funny story was he was a nervous type player by his own admission. He said he wished he hadn't choked the bat so much, and he wished that he could play a little more relaxed. And he was infamous for. He still holds the major league record for the most errors made in one inning, which is 4. Now, the story behind it is it happened in Boston against the Boston Braves, and it was September 13th, 1942. My grandmother had been staying in Boston to give birth to my father, who was born about 5 o'clock in the morning at one of the hospitals up there. And my grandfather, as a new proud papa, walks to the ballpark a few blocks away and has a good first game of the doubleheader. And the second game of the doubleheader, he makes these 4 errors. So the newspaper writer writes up the game, and at the bottom he announces the birth of my dad, and he says they ought to nickname the kid Boots. And it's stuck. My father's 78 years old, and he still goes by Boots Merullo. There was always the ability to laugh at himself, and knowing that you could take yourself. That's what he really kind of shared with me was, how to play the game the right way, but also you're going to be humbled, and you got to be able to roll with the punches and kind of have a thick skin and all that kind of stuff. And there was an attitude. And Charlie Grimm was a guy. I read his book, Jolly Charlie, and he just, it was really cool to see. Here's a guy talking about managing and starting out in the late 30s and understanding that, in his opinion, it was just always players are going to play better when they're loose and relaxed and, and having fun than, trying to whoop them into shape. And, I think to myself, what's old school? Everybody thinks old school is being a tough guy. And I think, no, it's, understanding the game and understanding players and understanding how to get them to perform. So, yeah, he was part of a Cubs winning tradition, which was, rare. But he had that pennant ring forever, and he wore it very proudly. And he always had a scar on his forearm that he told was from the World Series when he got in and made a tag on somebody at second base, and he got spiked, and he wouldn't let it heal properly because he wanted to have a scar for life from the World Series. To say that's where he got it. So.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you both played for Chicago.
Really cool. He and my grandmother came out and visited my wife and I, and it was so much fun taking them around, going out to lunches and stuff like that. Somewhere I've still got a picture of he and I at the ballpark before BP, with the new Comiskey scoreboard in the background. And, I was about 15 one summer. He was at a old-timers game. It would have been 1980. And Ernie Banks and Billy Williams and Ron Santo, all these guys, my grandmother on my mother's side was working out at Northwestern University in the library, and she had an apartment. I stayed with her, and she brought me to this old-timers game. And my grandfather sees me and says, "Come on down." And, I'm in the locker room with these guys. I'm sitting in the dugout. And, these were the kind of things that just so lucky to have experience being around, big leaguers or professionals and the game itself. It's just really was a blessing,
No question, iconic figures. We're talking with former Major League Baseball catcher Matt Merullo. Matt, what I want to do now is I want to give our audience, our listeners, my baseball fans listening to the show, a broader view of your baseball career and achievements. Let's begin in college. You played for the University of North Carolina. Talk about the experience. How well do you feel the college level prepared you for the minor leagues?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it, I think it prepared me in a lot more ways than I realized it at the time. Looking back, what I mean by that, it was just. I think now some of the college players that I played against and who I was, playing with, and what they did afterwards at the major league level, it was a pretty amazing time in college baseball because of the draft. I was behind a guy named B.J. Surhoff at North Carolina. He was there as a shortstop coming out of New York high school. But there was another guy playing shortstop who was the same freshman year as B.J., which was 1 year ahead of me, and his name was Walt Weiss. So Walt Weiss was playing shortstop, as a rookie of the year, a first-round pick. So B.J. finds himself stuck behind the plate because he's a good athlete. And, my recruiting process was, let's go get a real catcher, yada, yada. And coach liked the way I swung the bat left-handed. And, but BJ, meanwhile, was getting better and better. And it was really the first time, I thought I had a good throwing arm until I was down there, trying to take infield with him and Walt Weiss throwing the ball back from second base. He just flicks his wrist. And I was like, whoa. And you don't really, I remember going to, my freshman year, we flew out to Arizona State, and we were getting ready for a regional that was going to be played against Mississippi State. But Arizona State happened to be a guy named Barry Bonds playing for them. And
wow.
I go to Mississippi State, and I'm in the lineup, and I'm playing against two other guys that hit left-handed that are fun to watch, named Will Clark and Rafael Palmeiro. And and Bobby Thigpen's playing right field, who I'm later with in the white. So I had no idea who these guys were, but it was amazing. And for me, I'm trying to I basically got a lot of at bats as a freshman and played a lot, but I had higher expectations, and I was kind of hard on myself. And and I went to the Cape Cod League that summer as a freshman, and that's hard to do too as a freshman play there. And I was hitting about 280, thinking, God, I stink, But looking back on it, not too bad. But then the following year, I got to play for Team USA in 1985. Got guys like Matt Williams and Jack McDowell. First time I met Jack. And that was 14 players. Joe Girardi was another catcher on that team. And we played in tournaments in Japan and South Korea and Canada. And it was a barnstorming summer-long thing, but it was the year after the original Olympic team. And again, I look back and, it's like a Forrest Gump career, starting out with, just the names that I came across, the guys that I was with. And then, I found myself, I couldn't wait to get into professional baseball. I felt like college baseball was just, in some ways it was so many months of practice and not enough months of true competition. And there was a lot of, I guess you start learning a lot about how to do things, so to speak, mechanically, and a lot of it's useless information. So you start tinkering around for all these months, is what I'm trying to say. And then I got into professional baseball, and third base coach is all of a sudden, he's not saying anything. I'm not getting a hitting lesson while I'm trying to hit Kevin Brown for Georgia Tech,
Right.
And, and I look back and I go, I used to feel this as a scout, and I told this to my scouting director one day. I said, look, it's not like the program makes the player all the time. It's the players who make the program. Like, who wouldn't want to go to the University of North Carolina if you could get in,
Right.
So in a lot of ways, like, I felt like, these guys don't really care about preparing you for minor league baseball. They don't really even know how. But it's a stepping stone that you go through, and there's, in some ways, I just think, it's helpful for the program to try to say we've produced these guys. But I don't buy into that. I know what I learned when I got out of college, and I know I would have understood it when I was 12 years old too. I went through a lot of trial and terror, so to speak, going in college, and all the batting stances and all of this and that and the techniques you got to do. And, and you get into professional baseball and they just want to say, hey, go play. Let's see what you got. And you learn how to be yourself again, so to speak. And you start taking ownership of your own career. And, it's totally different. And, I don't think there's, in some ways, what prepared me in college to play at professional level was just exposure to some really good players, But as far as how to approach the game, how to work, and how to train, how to think, didn't learn that in college,
Matt, I'm sorry, Matt, you obviously left an impression because you were drafted 7th round, June '86.
Correct. And also, like other things, though, coming off that Team USA, you could look at the old Baseball Americas. I was supposed to go in the top 3. I had a disappointing season, and I was immature in a lot of ways. But I would hit the players that were. A lot of times I found myself, against the weaker pitching, I got myself out because I was focusing on something going on with my stance, or I was making things more difficult. Then, like I mentioned, a Kevin Brown or an Eric Hansen or somebody that, in the conference, they were good. And it was like the light bulb went off. Okay, I don't have time for this BS. I got to compete. And that's what the scouts saw, was the ability to hit the good pitches. So I didn't really have good statistics. I didn't have the great numbers, but they could see that my swing would work against, the higher levels. So that was what got me there. It was really like the ability to swing the bat. And I look back. I was a third leading hitter on that team. 14 guys went in the first round, that team being that Team USA. Now, granted, it's like maybe 85 or 90 at bats over the course of the summer, but, it was, like I said, there was some pretty good hitters on that team that had some good careers, guys like Jeff King and Matt Williams and, some other guys that played for a while. Like I said, it's funny. It's so much of my experience when I look back on it, and then I look at what I did as a scout after having played. It's very interesting. When you think you just you're looking back at yourself again as a 19, 20 something year old, and how you must have been evaluated by others yourself, whether it's your body language or your ability and, things like that. It makes you think. But, again, a lot goes back to my grandfather. His so much insight to how to play, how to show yourself off, so to speak, in front of, people that are making decisions and, try to handle your emotions as well.
Well, I'm looking at some of your statistics here. You had a solid year, 1986, when you played for the Peninsula League. You batted .303 with 35 RBIs. That was a solid year. You also had a solid year in '88 when you played for the Birmingham Barons. You collected 117 hits that season. And your manager was Rico Petrocelli. Is that correct?
Yeah. Super guy. Yep.
So did you learn? You must have learned a lot from Rico.
Oh yeah. Again, it's so much is by example, and so much is by watching people handle, the daily grind. Rico was really steady, and he was obviously a winner. And ironically, he also was a guy that, coming out of, I think he was originally from Brooklyn.
Yeah, he was from Brooklyn.
I think he wanted to go home and quit I think he did like twice in his early career.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so there was a human side to him. He knew how this game could be. And, you learned kind of how to, it's one of those things. I think that summer moving up to AA, I was very young at 21 years old still, and there were guys that were pushing 30 years old. In fact, they were like babies coming into the locker room after the games. I'm like, what? I'm playing with men now. And Rico was the manager, and ironically, Mo Drabowski was the pitching coach who my grandfather had originally signed to the Cubs. And that's a whole nother. Mo's beautiful, but those two. But Rico was that kind of guy. It's like you're never really as bad as you think you are. You're never as good as you think you are. And, that even keel and just steady approach, and, things are fine. And just keep doing the same old thing, which is discipline, not in a punishment way, but it's doing the mundane thing over and over that's just going to get you better, and instead of trying to reinvent the wheel when things aren't going your way,
Now, reading a little bit about your career, Matt, I guess your performance in AA was looking fantastic because you were called up to replace an injured Carlton Fisk. Is that true?
Yes. Another Forrest Gump part of my experience, like Surhoff to Joe Girardi, now Carlton Fisk, and it was really Jeff Torborg became the new manager, and Jeff Torborg, I was. He taught me how to catch at the big league level. I was a guy that was, I had a bat, and I was trying to learn how to be adequate defensively at that level. There was a rap on me that, I really wasn't going to be good enough defensively to catch. And Torborg it was like a clean slate with him, and he showed me a lot of things. And Fisk was, obviously older, and he wasn't playing as much, so it created more playing time for other catchers in spring training. And I found myself getting more of an opportunity than I thought, and I was excelling. And Walt Reniak was the new hitting coach too, and he really he really took to my swing and made me feel confident and just gave me really, simple advice that he gave everybody, which was, number one thing, keep your head on the ball. And, he didn't overcomplicate things at all. And he didn't care what I had done in the past. It was like, this is what you can do now. And so I stuck with it. And I performed really well in spring training, and I wound up making the team in 1989. Fisk got hurt first week of the season, and it was like a dream come true, obviously. But I never would have thought I would be catching, the home opener in Chicago, and the mayor Daly's throwing out the first pitch, and it's against the Oakland A's, who had just won the World Series in '88. Dave Stewart's the Cy Young Award guy. I wound up throwing out the first runner who tried to steal, who had 28 bags in a row going back to last year. I get my first base hit off a Cy Young winner. Dave Stewart was a bullet in center field. And then I hit a home run my last time up against Rick Honeycutt. And it's just, geez, like my parents were there, and my wife and my mother-in-law were there. The old Western telegrams are coming underneath the hotel room door to congratulations from people all walks of life, and it was just very surreal. And then I started getting some base hits coming off the bench, but again, I was a work in progress behind the plate. And when Fisk came back, I was back down to the minor leagues, and met a fantastic coach named Rick Peterson down there. Really, that turned a lot of things around for me too, mentally, defensively as a catcher, working with the pitching staff, things like that. And, but Fisk was, a quick story was the first, here I am, I'm just newly married, and my wife used to spend her summers with her grandparents up in, Worcester, Massachusetts. And like many 14-year-old girls, has a crush on this guy catching for the Red Sox in late 70s. So fast forward, now her husband is like on the same thing, spring training. So I get out of the shower and I'm going over to the sinks and I'm going to shave. And 2 minutes later, Fisk walks in and he's in a sink next to me and he's about to start to shave. And I'm getting nervous as heck. It's just the two of us. And I'm like, oh, my God, I'm going to slice myself right here. And Fisk says, Merullo, where do I know that name? He goes, I know there was a Lennie Merullo as a scout. I go, that's my grandfather. And that's when Fisk about cut his own throat. Your grandfather, jeez. So I felt, it was one of those things. I had enough respect for the guys that had played the game, and I'd been around enough that I knew kind of when to keep my mouth shut. And, Fisk he could be very intimidating, very stoic, and also very aloof. But if you asked him, a question at the right time, the right way, he was just a world of knowledge, And it was, again, I just... I think sometimes I wish I could have back in the strike years, and it's like, man, I would love to give my 2 weeks notice and go get another job with somebody else. I'm stuck behind this guy. I'm blowing out before he does, and he's 45 years old, still playing, But the things, just the experience of being around the guy. So one more story for your listeners. We were on a plane. It's got Bo Jackson on the plane. And Bo's traveling with us, but he can't get in the lineup yet. He's still on the DL. And Pudge is getting a little frustrated with the entourage and the attention. And this particular plane ride is late at night. We're going home after a 10-day road trip. And Fisk is sitting across from the aisle, one row behind me. And I turn to my left and I put on my headphones, and the engine right outside my window bursts into flames. And I look around like everybody else. Everybody pops up. You got Ozzie Guillen, who's like, he's playing a card game, talking a mile a minute. It's the first time he ever shut up in his whole life. And I look at Fisk, and he's looking at Bo Jackson, who's getting out of his seat, and he's darting up to the cockpit, literally, to go find out what's going on. And Fisk says out loud, condescendingly to himself, "Go get him, Bo." And I don't know why. I couldn't help myself. I looked at Fisk, and all this is happening in a matter of like 25 seconds. I look at Fisk, I go, "God, I've been waiting for you to go down on one of these things for 5 years, and now I'm on the same damn plane." Jeez. You know? And everybody who heard me laughed. And then Fisk realized it was funny, but he reached across and gave me a nice little love tap on my cheek, and his, the size of his hand engulfed my whole head. And, he got a little chuckle out of it. But that was, kind of the joke. Like, this guy's not going to play unless the bus goes over the cliff,
Man,
so,
and they're telling me I have 1 minute, Matt. I wanted to get this question in, if you don't mind, about the position of catching. I always wondered, how does one is able to crouch for a 9-inning game? I mean, is there any training that has to be done? A lot of squatting?
Well, I think it's an individual thing. If squatting should be a restful position for some people. Like I could squat in the outfield and just relax my legs and hang out and shag while the pitchers are standing around. It's learning to get up to block, to get it, footwork to throw. So it takes durability. I think naturally you're comfortable down there. If you're not comfortable, you're never going to catch. But what it takes is flexibility and strength to maintain it. And again, Carlton Fisk, great example. That guy was constantly stretching and lifting weights and maintaining his, mobility and strength as long as he possibly could. So that's really a key for all catchers, is just, to not get lazy, but to, develop more flexibility and strength to go with their natural ability to squat comfortably, I guess is the best way to put it. Because, I'm lucky. I've never really had knee problems, from wear and tear. It's more hips, which is more flexibility stuff than anything else,
And very quickly, I believe you also need soft hands to catch, correct?
Absolutely. Yes, very much so. Soft hands, that's what Jeff Torborg taught me. First thing he says, get your hand up like you're a little dog begging for a bone, And what it was relaxed, and it's like a sparring partner. You're taking the punches. You're receiving blows, so to speak. So a good catcher makes it look easy,
Well, I got 30 seconds. I really appreciate your time. I thank you for being on. Anytime you want to come on, just send an email and we'll get you right on.
I'd love to, I hope it was enjoyable for your listeners. It's always fun for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. That was a 6-year Major League Baseball veteran, Matt Merullo. Until next week, happy collecting to all.